If your heart is weak and you do not have the ability to endure violent scenes and stories full of crime and sadism, leave this video. Because what I am about to talk about, even I was not able to endure it. For an entire week, I have been psychologically exhausted from the words I am about to say, from the amount of videos I watched, and from the facts I heard. If it were not my duty to continue revealing the truth, and for the whole world to know what is happening, I would not have made this video. This is not just the story of Saydnaya. The subject is a network of branches, prisons, psychiatrists, wardens, and engineers. They designed torture deliberately and perfected it with disturbing creativity. The prisoner would live as long as possible, and death would become a dream for him. For those seeing me for the first time, this channel, Deep Folds, I talk about everything strange and mysterious on planet Earth. Today we will talk about the system of repression and torture inside Syrian prisons, specifically Saydnaya. We will learn names of security branches in prisons you have never heard of before. I will explain how arrests and torture took place, and we will learn about the Red Prison. In the end, we will reach a terrifying truth. Saydnaya was not just a prison. It was like a company that countries contracted with to torture and disappear human beings. All of this was happening in front of cameras, in paid broadcasts, known and famous on the dark web. Before we go to Saydnaya and the year 2024, you must understand something. What you have seen so far is considered the most civilized and advanced. Compared to the rest of the Syrian prisons, which exist in places your mind cannot imagine. You must understand what crimes the people committed who were taken there. The entire idea came from the mentality of Hafez al-Assad. One of the most famous leaked statements attributed to him was this: "Be careful not to let the people love me. I want them to fear me. My name must never be spoken loudly." With this mentality, the Assad system was built. This mindset required the creation of a large number of security branches, each specializing in a particular category of people. The authority of these branches was higher than the highest authority in Syria. Even a low-ranking guard could kick open the door of a minister. Syria had countless branches: Branch 215, Branch 295, Branch 274, and the Al-Khatib branch. Remember that name. All branches fell under major directorates: internal security, external security, political security, military intelligence, Air Force intelligence, and the Palestine branch, directly overseen by the Assad family. As an ordinary Syrian citizen, any branch could summon you without any logical reason. A simple disagreement with your neighbor could lead to your arrest if he had a friend in Air Force intelligence. You might think they would politely call and ask you to come, but that never happened. Officers were trained and given clear instructions that citizens must never feel safe. Even if you were the most honorable person alive, checkpoint officers would treat you like a war criminal. Many Syrians silently ask themselves, "What did I do? What did I say? Did someone write a report about me?" If your name did not appear as wanted, they returned your ID, often with visible disappointment. If your name did appear, the officer would quietly signal others, surround you, and take your phone. They would arrest you without explanation, and if you dared to ask why, they had the authority to beat you for hours. The most important rule was secrecy. When someone was taken, no one was allowed to know where he was taken or who arrested him. This created a black market of intermediaries who demanded enormous bribes just to provide information. Families sometimes paid $200,000 just to learn which branch held their son. The intermediary would provide a small detail to prove authenticity, something only the detainee would know. But if the accusation was considered serious, the method of arrest was completely different. A convoy of up to 30 vehicles carrying more than 100 officers would be sent. Around 3, 4, or 5 in the morning, the order would be given. More than 30 officers could storm the house at once. They would break the door down, beat everyone inside, destroy furniture, and arrest the target. The detainee would be beaten all the way down to the vehicle so everyone could see, so fear would spread in everyone's hearts. Every intelligence officer was trained to follow these steps exactly. If any officer showed mercy, he himself could be punished, humiliated, or even imprisoned for treason. Once the detainee was taken, no one was allowed to know which branch took him or why. A detainee could spend months or years being tortured without even knowing his charge. According to testimonies, about 95% of people arrested directly from their homes eventually died under torture or were executed. One of the most terrifying aspects was that detainees often did not know where they were. When they first arrived, guards would beat them severely. This stage was sarcastically called the welcome. After losing consciousness from beatings, they would be thrown into a cell. Meanwhile, their families outside suffered in uncertainty, not knowing whether their loved one was alive or dead. Charges could be completely absurd. Some people were accused of insulting Bashar al-Assad. Others were accused of stealing tanks or aircraft. Fabricated accusations with no evidence. Some employees were arrested simply for not applauding enthusiastically enough during official meetings. Even failing to celebrate national political events could result in arrest. Now we arrive at Saydnaya Prison, one of the most documented and infamous prisons in Syria. Saydnaya was built in 1987 by order of Hafez al-Assad on a plateau 30 kilometers north of Damascus. The external structure resembled the Mercedes-Benz logo, 3 main buildings. What was visible above ground was only a small portion. Beneath were at least 3 underground levels. Escape was considered impossible. Survivors said even birds could not escape. At least 30,000 detainees died inside. The prison was divided into sections known by colors. The white prison, considered the least brutal. Most survivors who appeared in videos after release came from this section. The blue prison, used primarily for executions. The black prison, extremely secretive, with claims that torture was filmed there. The red prison, one of the most feared sections of all. In 2008, prisoners staged a rebellion because they could no longer endure the torture. They captured guards and held them hostage. Negotiations took place with Maher al-Assad, who promised to improve conditions. Prisoners released the hostages in good faith. But only days later, special forces stormed the prison. They tortured and killed many prisoners involved. According to testimonies, prisoners' blood was collected, and surviving detainees were forced to use it to paint prison walls. After that event, the section became known as the Red Prison. A major reason the world learned about Saydnaya was a military photographer known as Caesar. In 2014, Caesar defected and smuggled out approximately 55,000 photographs. These images documented detainees who died in custody, bodies bearing signs of torture, starvation, and execution. After the leak, authorities reportedly transferred many prisoners to even more secret locations, beneath military bases, schools, and other hidden facilities. Now we reach the most disturbing part, the journey of a detainee inside these prisons. Torture took place in open areas near the cells. Survivors said the sound was worse than death itself. Impossible to tell whether screams came from a man or a woman. Even when no new detainees arrived, guards were required to randomly select prisoners at night, just to maintain constant fear. Guards would walk between cells shouting, "Azrael has arrived." Solitary confinement. Cells barely enough for one person often held 5 or more prisoners. They were forced to stand continuously for days because there was no space to sit. Some prisoners died while standing. There was no toilet. Food was minimal. Sometimes only spoiled scraps, just enough to keep them alive. Suspension, known as shabe, prisoners were handcuffed and suspended from the ceiling. Their bodies hung in positions that caused extreme pain while preventing unconsciousness. Circulation was restricted. Prisoners remained in agony for extended periods while being beaten. The slaughterhouse, a room where prisoners saw others hanging, severely injured, or already dead. The purpose was psychological destruction, to force total submission. Salt rooms were used to store bodies. The floor was covered with thick layers of salt to slow decomposition. New detainees were sometimes brought in to see the corpses, reinforcing the message that death was inevitable. Cells were intentionally kept filthy. Many prisoners died from disease, infection, and starvation. Food rations were extremely small. Sometimes just a single potato or piece of spoiled food per day. Prisoners were often forbidden from lying down. Some prisoners died, and their bodies remained in the cells for long periods because others were too afraid to alert guards. Prisoners sentenced to death were placed in a small pit in the ground for several days without food or water, a pit that functioned like a grave. After several days, they were taken for execution. Methods reportedly varied, including hanging. Other prisoners were sometimes forced to watch, a form of psychological torture. Torture was not only intended to punish detainees, it was designed to spread fear throughout society. Some survivors were deliberately released so they could describe what they experienced. Every aspect, food, beatings, medical treatment, was calculated to keep prisoners alive as long as possible while maximizing suffering. Death became something prisoners hoped for. Now the terrifying truth I did not want to tell you, Saydnaya was not just a prison. It was like a company that countries contracted with to torture and disappear human beings. All of this was happening in front of cameras, in paid broadcasts, known and famous on the dark web. Intermediaries and corrupt officials made enormous sums of money. Entire networks profited from the suffering of detainees and their families. Even today, hundreds of thousands of people remain missing. Their fate is unknown. Some may have died in prison, others may still be held in undisclosed locations. Rescue teams and investigators have searched former prison sites but were unable to access all underground areas. Evidence may have been destroyed. Many families continue searching for answers. To the Syrian people, justice will eventually come, and the suffering of detainees will not be forgotten. Rebuild your country. Avoid revenge. Focus on the future. Hatred and revenge only create more destruction. Seek justice through lawful means. Rebuild your society. Create a future where such suffering never happens again. The truth will continue to emerge, and the victims will be remembered.